Beauties! Spring is here, and you all know what that means. It's that time of the year when I tell you all about 10 palettes with a color story that's going to be ideal for the spring. So if that sounds good, don't forget to press the like button and let's get started. Let's get started. In no particular order, our first palette is Warlock. And yes, beauties, for this video, I have picked palettes that have launched in the past 12 months. Why do I consider this palette a good palette for spring? Well, when I'm looking at palettes that I consider nice for spring, I'm looking for a few things. First of all, having some green colors that kind of reminds me of vegetation, revival of nature, having some flowery colors, again for the same reason, and this palette has both of those. And personally, I also like some deep tones, just in general. It's a personal choice, nothing to do with spring, but this palette has it all, so I love using this palette. Palette number 2 is Samara Sunset from Adept. Same thing that I just mentioned, some greens, a lot of flowery tones. The reds in this palette I love, and they totally remind me of spring, you know, the blossoms and the flowers. Yeah, I generally feel like I haven't used this palette a whole lot, and I'm looking forward to using it a lot more this season. Palette number 3 is Prom Night from Cosmetics. This is a Spanish brand. I purchased this palette when I was in Spain recently, and you can see why this is such a springy palette. I mean, we do have a little green there. Spring is such a good time for using all of these pops of colors and eye looks, and I absolutely can't wait to use this palette even more. I already have a few looks with this palette. I'll tag all of them below. I've also looked into this, and you can purchase Cosmetics from the US. It's similar to how you would purchase Glam Shop and all these other brands. You can buy it on their website and have them ship it to you to the US. And while I'm showing you our fourth palette, which is Rich Romantic from Glaminatrix, I want to tell you all, beauties, that I did this video last year, and in that video I also mentioned a few palettes that you can use in the spring, and obviously all of those palettes are still great spring palettes, and this video is going to include palettes that are different from that video, except for one palette that is sort of an extra bonus. So it's going to be our 11th palette. That's a palette I did my eye look with. Rich Romantic, such a beautiful spring palette. You have some multichromes that kind of have a green shift. I don't know if you all can see this. This one has a green shift, and the rest of the colors are very warm toned and also very flower colors, which is great for the spring. I can already see the possibilities here. I have eye looks with this palette, beauties. I'll tag that for you all as well. But such a great palette for making eye looks that have pops of colors this season. Our next palette is the Moth and the Moon from Dia Varun, and I believe this palette is restocking, I think, for the final time. So hey, if you don't have it and you want it, make sure you pick it up before it's gone. And although I'm all about telling you all you should not pick up makeup that you don't need, which is still the case. If you don't need it, don't buy it. I have purchased this palette, so I can't tell anybody else not to do that. And I highly, highly recommend this palette. Amazing quality and a great color story for the spring. You have the greens, you have all the pops of colors, very flowery colors, so beautiful. I have made great eye looks with this palette, so I'm looking forward to using it more. I'm losing count, but I think this is our 6th palette. And for this one, I picked Nomads Royal Europe. Same rules. You have your greens, you have a lot of pops of colors. So great palette and great color story for the spring, and I really enjoyed using this palette. I think it has amazing quality. I've definitely done some fun eye looks with this palette. I'll tag one of them in the description below for you all. And now for our bonus palette, which is a palette that I talked about also in my last year's video, which is our 11th palette that's not in the count, but it is a palette that I have done my eye look with. And beauties, that palette is no other than Cosmic Brush's Muse palette. This is such a great palette for this time of the year. You have all the beautiful nature greens And the pinks, the orange, all of these pops of colors, even this color. And as I mentioned, I've done my look with this palette, and I consider my look pretty springy look. So such an amazing palette if you can get your hands on it, or if you already have it. Yeah, beauties, don't go buy something you don't need. If you have it, this is a great time of the year to whip it out and start using it. And now for the final four. Serpent palette is my number 4, which is a collaboration between Marta from Marta's Makeup and Micka Beauty Shop. You have some greens in this palette, but you have a lot of pops of colors that are absolutely gorgeous. I already have a review. I've done a lot of looks at this palette in this channel, and I keep bringing this palette out and doing more looks with it. I'm a huge fan of Micka Beauty Shop's quality. I think they have pretty good quality. So if you have this palette, it's a great time to use it. Part of the reason I wanted to cheat a little bit and do the 11th palette we talked about in this video is because this next palette, I don't think you can get your hands on anymore because of some ridiculous scandal and drama. And that's no other than Sugar and Grunge, which is actually, I think, my favorite palette, if not one of my favorite palettes from last year. I was not expecting it, but I loved this palette. Amazing quality, even the pastels, and you all know I'm not a pastel lover. Worked amazing on me. This palette was greatly pigmented. I have a review of it, and I could make some very cool looks that I loved and I was not expecting to love. Sadly, you can't get your hands on it, but if you have it, this is a great time to bring it out and use it. You have your greens, you have all the flower colors. Yeah, this is a great palette for this time of the year. And if you don't know what eye looks to make with it, you can check out my video. I'll tag it for you all. This next one has a little bit of a different color story because it's also kind of summery, but I love using summer palettes sometimes in the spring, and that is Citrus Punch. I'm looking forward to using this palette some more because the last time I used it, I think, was when I reviewed it for you all. And this is such a spring color story. I mean, all of these pops of colors are so nice, amazing for this time of the year. The greens, again, amazing for this time of the year, and I have it, so I should definitely use it. I also know they're restocking this palette. Again, not trying to incentivize anybody to pick it up, but if you've somehow missed out on it and you absolutely needed it, it will be restocking. And beauties, last but not least, in our speed listing of spring palettes, we have Fantasia from Devinah. This is such a beautiful color story because you have all of these beautiful purples and you have some that have a shift of green. You can make great color stories with this kind of a palette that would be appropriate for spring. You can make things that are a little bit more neutral as well as a little bit more purple, and all of them are going to look great for the spring. I have a video doing at least one look with this palette. I'm personally looking forward to using it more this season and making more looks with it. And I'm probably going to post all of the looks that I make with these palettes online on Instagram. So if you don't have me on Instagram, don't forget to add me. Okay, beauties, I hope you enjoyed this video. As I mentioned, I do this video almost every season, and I do have a playlist for it. If you want to check out my last spring's listing, that video should be recommended to you about now. Hope you're having an amazing day. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And until next time, bye.